Welcome to this edition of the Meteorology Matters podcast.
Great to be here.
If you enjoy discussions like this one, remember you can follow meteorologist Rob Jones. He's on Instagram at meteorologist, TikTok at TV Meteorologist.
And YouTube as well.
Right, YouTube, follow Rob Jones Hurricane. You can also find the Meteorology Matters podcast playlist there.
Good stuff.
So today we're diving into some, pretty significant shifts within the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and the National Weather Service, too.
Yeah, especially with a potentially active storm season basically upon us. It's a concerning timing.
Exactly. There are indicators that staffing levels at the National Weather Service are facing some, let's say, considerable challenges.
It's putting it mildly.
We want to look at what this might mean for the forecasts and warnings, the ones everyone relies on. Accuracy, timeliness, all of that.
It's definitely a situation worth watching closely. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of factors really squeezing the agency.
Okay, so let's start with the staffing itself. I read about a recent federal buyout offer.
That's right. A buyout was offered, and the expectation is that at least 300 National Weather Service employees are leaving because of it. The deadline was just this past Thursday.
300 people? That sounds like a lot on its own. But this isn't the only reason for vacancies, is it?
No, not at all. This is layered on top of existing shortages. You've got retirements happening naturally, plus vacancies from previous buyouts or separations that just haven't been filled. It's been an ongoing issue.
So the Weather Service Director, Ken Graham, he's actually spoken about this.
He has. He indicated that the situation is getting quite serious, potentially leaving several forecast offices with maybe only 7 meteorologists.
7? What's the usual number?
Well, ideally, you'd want something like 12 to 15 meteorologists in a typical forecast office to cover everything, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, especially during active weather.
Wow, so 7 instead of 15. That's basically half. The workload must be immense.
It effectively means each person is potentially doing the work of almost 2 people. That leads to burnout, fatigue, and frankly, increases the risk of errors.
And looking bigger picture, the entire agency size, it shrunk considerably.
Yeah, the numbers suggest the Weather Service is nearly 20% smaller now than it was when President Donald Trump took office.
20%. That's a significant chunk of their workforce gone.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's why you're hearing concerns, serious concerns, from meteorologists still on the job and from public officials, too.
What are they most worried about?
The fear is that these kinds of staff reductions could have, potentially deadly consequences when severe weather hits. Fewer people means less capacity to monitor constantly, issue warnings quickly, communicate effectively with emergency managers.
So it's a chain reaction.
Exactly. Everything gets stretched thinner.
And are these shortages spread evenly, or are some areas feeling it more?
It seems to be hitting the central part of the country particularly hard. Offices like Kansas City, Omaha, Louisville, Des Moines, Grand Rapids, they're reportedly facing the biggest staffing gaps.
And those areas get a lot of severe weather, don't they? Tornadoes, big thunderstorms.
Precisely. It's a concerning concentration of shortages in a very active weather region.
So how are the folks still working there coping? More hours?
Definitely more overtime.
Yeah.
Significantly more from what we understand. Fewer shifts are fully staffed, which is risky.
Meaning sometimes there just aren't enough people physically there.
Right. And you're also seeing managers having to step back from their management duties to actually work the forecast desk just to keep basic services running.
That can't be sustainable in the long run. I saw a quote from a former meteorologist in charge.
Ah, but what about stretching things?
You can only stretch things so much. Eventually things start to break. That really paints a picture.
It does. It highlights the intense pressure and the potential breaking points. Well, delayed warnings, maybe less specific forecasts, missing subtle clues in the data, because people are just overloaded.
Human error becomes more likely too, I imagine.
Absolutely. When you're tired, working long hours under stress, mistakes can happen. And in weather forecasting, mistakes can have serious impacts.
It's not just about the number of people either, right? I heard something about building maintenance issues.
Yes, that was a striking example. Reports mentioned a forecast office in Kentucky during recent deadly storms actually had to use portable toilets because of facility issues.
Portable toilets. Trying to issue warnings for deadly weather.
It sounds unbelievable, but it highlights the challenging conditions some staff are working under. It's not just about forecast models. It's about basic infrastructure sometimes.
That's just rough. And these buyouts, they weren't just at the Weather Service, but across NOAA generally.
Correct. The broader National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration saw over 870 employees volunteer for buyouts as of last Wednesday.
Over 870 across the whole agency. So this impacts fisheries, ocean research, everything NOAA does.
Potentially, yes. It raises questions about the agency's overall capacity across its wide range of responsibilities.
And is there a sense among the staff who are left that this might not be the end of the cuts?
There's definitely anxiety reported among staff about potential future cuts, possibly through something called a reduction in force or RIF. That uncertainty just adds more stress.
Now, politically, the Trump administration's budget proposal for next year, it mentioned NOAA, didn't it?
It did. The proposal included a pretty significant cut to NOAA's overall budget, about 27%.
27% cut overall, but the Weather Service itself.
Interestingly, the proposal kept the National Weather Service's funding level flat. No cut, but no increase either.
So the Weather Service budget stays the same, but other parts of NOAA face big cuts.
That seems to be the plan outlined in that proposal. However, it's crucial, as we said, that even with flat funding, the Weather Service was already understaffed before these latest 300 departures.
Right, so flat funding with fewer people still means doing more with less. Or maybe doing less, period.
Exactly. It still poses major challenges for maintaining the level of service people expect and need.
Okay, so given these staffing issues, what are the potential direct impacts on the weather services we actually receive?
Well, a memo surfaced, obtained by the Washington Post, outlining potential service cutbacks. One big one is weather balloon launches.
The weather balloons? I see those mentioned sometimes. Why are they so important?
They're absolutely critical. They launch twice a day from 92 sites across the U.S. They carry instruments called radiosondes way up into the atmosphere.
What do those instruments measure?
Temperature, pressure, humidity, wind speed, and direction. Basically giving us a vertical profile of the atmosphere. It's fundamental data that goes directly into the computer weather models.
Ah, so the models need that data to make accurate predictions?
Precisely. It's also vital for aviation safety. Without that 3D atmospheric data, the forecasts just aren't as good. You lose resolution, maybe miss developing features.
And are we already seeing fewer launches?
Yes, there have already been instances, especially in the Northern Plains and Rockies, where launches have been limited or even skipped entirely due to staffing or other issues. Less data means potentially less reliable forecasts downstream.
That makes sense. I also heard about a directive possibly reducing the number of meteorologists on duty during quiet times.
That's right. A Commerce Department directive floated the idea of having just a single meteorologist working during quiet weather periods if vacancy rates climb.
Just one person covering everything.
The initial memo even linked higher vacancy rates, like 15%, to reducing balloon launches and maybe even suspending them at 35% vacancy.
Suspending balloon launches, that sounds drastic.
It does. Now, there was an update that sort of walked that back slightly, encouraging launches to continue with one meteorologist as long as a second person is available just for the prep work.
But still, it points towards much leaner staffing, even around the clock.
Definitely a sign of trying to operate with fewer resources, being stretched thin 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And it wasn't just balloons and staffing levels. Something about language translation, too.
Yeah, this is another concerning point. A contract for automatically translating weather service warnings into Spanish has apparently lapsed. It wasn't renewed.
So no more automatic Spanish translations.
It seems that way, which feels like a step backward, honestly. There had been efforts to improve multilingual communication, especially after past disasters showed how crucial it is to reach everyone.
Absolutely. Getting safety info out in multiple languages seems essential.
Losing that capability potentially leaves a large group of people more vulnerable because they might not get timely warnings in a language they understand.
That's really unfortunate. And there was almost a major IT problem, too.
Yes, a very close call. In late March, right when some dangerous storms were brewing, they nearly lost access to what was described as a cornerstone IT system.
Cornerstone, so like really important.
Sounds like it. The system used for processing WEGA data. It was due to a contract issue that apparently got resolved literally at the last minute.
Wow. Imagine losing that system right before a severe weather outbreak.
It highlights the kind of background vulnerabilities and pressures the agency is dealing with beyond just the frontline forecasting staff.
It really sounds like the dedication of the folks working there is being tested from all sides.
Absolutely.
And these immediate pressures, the staffing, the balloons, they're happening while there are also big questions about the future of the research that actually improves forecasting, right? These long-term threats.
Yes, and this could be the most damaging part in the long run. The administration's proposed budget for fiscal year 2026 includes a plan to completely eliminate NOAA's Oceanic and Atmospheric Research Office, OAR.
Eliminate it. The entire research
That's
office.
the proposal. It would mean closing its 10 research labs and also shutting down the 16 affiliated cooperative institutes, which are partnerships, often with universities.
Where would the research go?
The plan says remaining research efforts would be sort of scattered, moved into other NOAA departments, but essentially all the dedicated weather, climate, and ocean labs would close.
That sounds devastating for the science side of things.
It would be a massive blow. The American Meteorological Society, the AMS, and the National Weather Association, the NWA, put out a joint statement expressing extreme concern.
What did they say?
They said this would, and I'm paraphrasing here, drastically undercut the scientific backbone and the workforce needed for the accurate forecasts and warnings we depend on.
With potentially disastrous consequences.
Yes, for public safety and the economy. They also pointed out there wasn't much opportunity for feedback on this decision, suggesting it was maybe rushed.
What kind of research comes out of these labs that we might lose? Can you give some examples?
Oh, fundamental stuff. They highlighted the development of the National Doppler Radar Network, NECXRAD, that came from NOAA research.
Our main tool for seeing storms.
Exactly. Also, the creation and constant improvement of the computer weather models the National Weather Service relies on every single day. Those models need continuous research to get better.
Okay, so radar and the forecast models. What else?
The NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft program, those planes flying into storms, that capability stems from NOAA research.
Gathering that critical hurricane data.
Right. And models that track airborne hazards, think wildfire smoke, toxic plumes, volcanic ash. That's OAR work, too.
Things we've seen become more and more important recently.
Definitely. Even things like the system that warns about low oxygen, hypoxia in the Great Lakes, or the real-time tsunami monitoring system.
Tsunami monitoring, too. Wow.
Yes, and the systems that help predict El Niño for seasonal forecasts or manage water reservoirs. Plus, all the fundamental climate modeling and monitoring networks. It's a huge portfolio.
So if this research stops or is severely curtailed, the tools that the forecasters use will just stagnate.
That's the fear. Forecasts might stop improving or even get worse over time as the science stalls. Observational data could decrease, outreach could suffer, university research funding would plummet. It's a ripple effect.
The AMS made a point about the cost, didn't they? Something about coffee.
Yeah, they put it quite starkly. They said, NOAA research costs every American citizen less than a cup of coffee per year,
Less than a cup of coffee.
but provides massive returns in safety and economic benefits by improving forecasts and warnings. It really frames the value proposition.
That's a powerful way to put it.
And because of these concerns, both the AMS and NWA are urging people, if they're concerned, to contact their elected representatives and share their views on these proposed cuts.
So wrapping this up, it's clear we're looking at some really significant changes potentially affecting how we monitor and predict weather.
Yeah, the combination of the immediate staffing crunch of the Weather Service and these proposed deep cuts to NOAA's research arm, it raises serious questions.
Questions about the future reliability of forecasts, warnings, and ultimately public safety. It seems crucial to stay informed about this.
Absolutely. These aren't small tweaks. They could be fundamental shifts.
We definitely encourage listeners to keep following this story, stay informed, and perhaps, as suggested, reach out to your representatives with your thoughts.
Your voice can matter on issues like this.
And for more discussions like this, and to stay updated, remember to follow meteorologist Rob Jones, Instagram meteorologist, TikTok TV meteorologist, and YouTube Rob Jones Hurricane, where you'll also find the Meteorology Matters podcast playlist.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Meteorology Matters podcast.